The things that innovation evokes are both completely timeless and absolutely timely. You're hard-pressed to find any one word that can unleash that much in those minds of ours. But for all of these meetings that innovation has long enjoyed, there's one in particular that has really taken hold over the last 10 years that I think will change the innovation conversation in the next 10 years. And that meaning is growth. When I first started dabbling in innovation a couple decades ago, there was no pressure on it. Innovation could be the random, once-a-decade lightning strike, the big thing that accidentally went right, and everybody was happy. There were lots of easy ways, more chess-like predictable moves to grow a business. But the world's grown saturated and complicated, and today we see innovation being synonymous with growth. The companies that aren't innovating aren't growing. With that comes a new pressure. Now, pressure's good. Pressure brings out the best in us to invent new ways around things, and we should all invite that. And the importance of innovation now is a very exciting thing, but it means there's a challenge that we need to step up to. So on the one hand, we can say there's never been a better time to be an innovator, the tools, resources, and talent being thrown at us, but in many ways, never a tougher time, okay? We are seeing a number of forces coalescing to make us work harder to achieve innovation success. Barriers to entry have come down across categories. Retailers have consolidated. Consumers, no offense to the millennials in the room, but you should hear the nasty things big companies say about you. You guys change brands like you change socks. These forces of disintermediation. Should a client of ours like Citibank be worried about what other big banks are doing or what one of you guys are cooking up in a back room somewhere that could make their whole model go away? Open innovation, an incredibly exciting thing. Okay, I can throw my problem out to the marketplace and it will answer it for me, but your competitor can do exactly the same thing. So where's the durable advantage in that? And then we have the speed with which new ideas are taking hold, which is incredibly exciting if you're on the startup end of the food chain, but really scary if you're an incumbent. Why is Mark Zuckerberg freaked out and writing huge checks for all kinds of speculative things? Because he knows what happened to MySpace, right? And we could be displaced more quickly than we ever could. Now, all of these things would make it a challenging climate where innovators would have to work harder. But there's a multiplier that's been in play that's making them all even bigger issues. And that is that the innovation models in wide use today fail. They fail almost all the time. The reality is, when a group of smart people like you are commissioned by a company to answer a growth challenge with a big number on the wall and handed a blank piece of paper, the odds of that making the leap from the Post-it note to the street to the balance sheet are less than 1 in 10. Now, when innovation didn't have any urgency, that was okay. The once in a while lightning strike, was all you hoped for. But now that it means growth, that's an unacceptable kind of success rate moving forward. No other mission-critical business practice can afford that kind of low success rate. Now, to hear the conversation around innovation, you hear that failure is the natural, normal, and noble outcome of attempts at new stuff. But in starting Fahrenheit 212, we're crazy or naive enough to say, well, shouldn't we really just challenge that assumption? We thought a bit about the Wright brothers, and before they came along, you would have thought the natural outcome of human attempts at flight is broken bones and scattered gizmos all over the pasture. And of course, post the Wright brothers, we look and say it was a flaw in the method we were using to fly. It wasn't the nature of flying that was the problem. So is failure the nature of innovation, or is it a flawed method? So we set up Fahrenheit 212 as a mission-based business with one simple goal: to transform the odds of innovation success. Now, what that means to up the odds is different depending on where you sit in the innovation food chain. If you're a CEO, it means innovation can deliver predictable growth. Those random lightning strikes are toxic to a CEO. You want consistent growth over time. If you're a CFO, it's that your bets on innovation are delivering better returns than doing things like buying other companies or investing in operations. And if you're a project owner in innovation, you actually don't care if only 1 out of 10 projects succeed. You just really care about being the one that does get it right. So this has been kind of our obsession and curiosity over time. What's come of it is an innovation consultancy in New York and London. I do a lot of work with Fortune 500 companies and also some interesting emerging businesses. What we do is create innovation strategies and turn them into stuff, whether it's new products, new services, new experiences, new systems. And we're outcome obsessed as an organization, all about getting to the tangible outcome rather than saying, oh, we learned a lot, we had a great journey, look at all these post-it notes, it was spectacular. What's come of it as well is we've built over $3 billion in innovation revenue for some companies you've heard of. It's been a great privilege to work with them, but also a great learning environment for us. What's important to our mission of figuring out what works and what doesn't is the breadth of these organizations. So great companies in tech, in financial services, in retail, in hospitality, which has allowed us to spot the patterns of what works and doesn't work in these radically different situations and extrapolate a code for how to make it work a lot more often. What we do for these organizations is basically 6 buckets. Diagnose where we think growth can come from, do the exploratory work to tease out the unmet needs in the marketplace, turn that into strategy, and then in turn turn that into new products brought to life vividly through design. But if there's one big thing to take away about how to tip the odds from this 1 in 10 long shot nature to turning it into something with a high probability of success, it's to realize that innovation at its heart is a two-sided problem. If you think about the way an innovation funnel works in most organizations, there's a strategy function at the front end. Maybe it's corporate strategy people applying analytics to look at data and say, okay, here's where there appears to be a growth opportunity. We get to the middle of the funnel, and here we have the design function where we're applying empathy, getting deep consumer insight, teasing out unmet needs, and marrying them up with incredible product ideas. Then we get to the back end of the funnel where the filtering happens and ideas are killed off and the strong survive. Now, a few things jumped out to us in looking at this. Aside from the numbers game, where so many things go in and so few make it out, there's one powerful characteristic about the stuff that does make it out. The only stuff that makes it out are what we call two-sided solutions. What do we mean by that? On the one hand, we have the needs of the consumer. Okay, they need a better life, better experiences, security, comfort, pleasure. What does the business need? A business needs to know an innovation fits strategically with where they want to go. How am I going to make it work? How am I going to make money? How am I going to manage risk and reward? But what struck us a few years into the journey is a kind of profound and simple realization. These two sets of needs have nothing to do with each other. What do I mean? If I tease out an amazing unmet consumer need and come up with an incredible product to satisfy it, but if I trip and fall on any of these things on the other side of the ledger, that idea will never make it out to the street, will never touch a single consumer's life. Conversely, if I come up with the amazing analytical case pointing to here's where your growth lies, but I can't tease out that unmet consumer need and turn it into a compelling product, that strategy will never touch the balance sheet either. Now, in hindsight, back to this hypothesis, is there a methodology flaw that explains why 9 out of 10 things fail? It's this obvious gap. There is no innovation model, we realized, built to deliver to two sides of the equation. You've got analytical models and you've got design-led models, but either without the other is of no real value. So the method that emerged is what we call two-sided innovation, or we sometimes shorthand it as money and magic, which is letting form follow function, working from day one to say our job is to create a two-sided solution that is going to work for the consumer and the business, and every step of the journey calibrated toward doing that. Now, there's an interesting kind of meta theme behind this that I would call energizing tensions, where you take seemingly opposite things and crash them together, and amazing new things come out of it. If we look at Apple, the tension between technology and humanity, those were completely opposite things until Apple said, no, we're going to use humanity to give technology a point of view and use technology to abet human creativity and possibility. So harnessing that tension created something powerful. And even democracy. Before democracy came along, to be free and governed were seen as opposite things. You can't be both. Along comes democracy, and you see how freedom and governance actually propel one another when they're shoved together. So innovation has its own version of that, and we shorthand this as money and magic. Money, the analytical task of solving for what a business needs, and magic, the creative pursuit of new possibilities and consumer solutions. So the capabilities it takes to do this, we started out entirely on the right side and were creating beautiful ideas that were going off to die because they weren't built to be right for the organizations we were creating them for. And we realized we needed to build out this whole set of analytical capabilities and bolt them together in a methodology capable of doing big things over and over. Is a nice warm metaphor. You need to thread two needles with one move of one thread. Now, the interesting thing is if you're only looking at one of those two needles, whether it's the business or the consumer realities, it's actually very easy to get through that hoop. You can come from any angle you like. But the probability that the angle you take is going to go through that second thing that needs to be solved for is immensely low unless you're looking at the orientation of both of those things from the beginning. So thinking that innovation is a two-sided problem, what do we then do? Well, you want to create what we would call two-sided solutions. Innovation's purpose-built to be great for the consumer and amazing businesses. The Mini Cooper's fabulous because for consumers, it brought new personality, fun, self-expression to the small car experience at a level it never really had before. But as a business, the thing that makes it so powerful is it has nothing to do with that. Where other automotive companies decide that you need lots and lots of models with lots and lots of manufacturing lines, lots and lots of labor forces and tooling costs. They've built this from the beginning to be the most nimble and adaptable single model that could run down a production line. So what made it incredible for the consumer and as a business were very different things. With the Coca-Cola company, we were happy to collaborate in something called the Freestyle system, which satisfies consumers' desire for an ever-expanding array of beverage options while solving a huge pain point of the business that in quick service restaurants, consumers wanting hundreds of different beverage choices could never be satisfied without building bigger restaurants, and they weren't going to do that. So this amazing machine, which uses a technology akin to ink printers or dialysis machines, allows them to synthesize 100 different beverage options in exactly the same footprint as the old 4 or 5 spout soda fountains we've all lived with for years. So it's quite a brilliant two-sided solution. We got a really interesting call from Samsung, an amazing company of scale that's mind-blowing. They are 19% of the GDP of the 15th largest economy in the world. I mean, that scale is just absolutely daunting. Their biggest profit center was in LCD components. Margins were plummeting in all the current markets where LCD was playing. We had a challenge to try to open entirely new markets. The where to play at the beginning of this project, well, we knew what it couldn't be. It couldn't be a TV, a phone, or a computing device, which left the entire vastness of the rest of human life. In the strategy phase, the hardcore analytics come in. We needed to move over 600,000 screens. They had to be 10 inches or bigger in concentrated markets, launchable within 24 months with no new technology to propel it. In the solutions phase, we turned strategy into stuff. Specific ideas very deeply explored. We identified 9 or 10 addressable markets, none of which LCD was a meaningful force in. Apply serious commercial filtering to those possibilities. Is this market big enough? Are there big problems we can solve in this market? Filter them on a scale we call big, fast, doable, which is a critical tool when you want stuff to work. Understanding, is this a great idea for 20 years from now, or is this something that can be delivered within the kind of time horizon? And what jumped out of this was a very unexpected opportunity in the world's vending machines. There are 30 million of these things. We would only need to penetrate 5% to hit our commercial goals. These machines are physically big. If you need screens bigger than 10 inches, well, you've got a big host for them. 70% are owned by just 3 companies. They have electricity, which is a really good thing because an LCD screen without electricity isn't of great value. No obvious technical hurdles. The big thing that's interesting here is this was not using LCD to create a better vending machine that was going to sell a couple more things, although these machines absolutely do, but transforming the role it would play in the business of the companies who use them, turning it into a means of connection with the consumer on the street, not just a dumb distribution point. Some insight on how this money and magic two-sided alchemy actually works. This began with an observation at a pizza joint. There were a bunch of teenagers there kind of mugging and mocking a vending machine, saying, "Oh, you stupid dinosaur, what are you doing here?" And it got someone on our magic team thinking, well, gee, if they're mocking it, there's probably a reason. A phone call goes back to our money team, and in 24 hours they come back with a 360-degree commercial assessment of the vending industry and realize it's absolutely huge and deeply broken and deeply in need of this kind of innovation. And we got to realizing about that comment, the consumer comment about, you dumb machine. They were actually completely dumb as a business system. There were all these disconnected assets sitting all over the place with no connection, no synergy, no system, really. So we zigzag back and forth between understanding consumer pain points, the pain points of the guys who make the machines, technologies and UX design, the view of these machines through consumer packaged goods eyes, the functionality we wanted to have, etc. So what came of this? This has become an amazing new platform for Samsung and for anyone who has used vending. Coca-Cola picked up on it first and announced it at the Beijing Olympics, and they're now deploying these in pretty large scale around the world. Unilever came in and did a brilliant thing over here where they added a layer of facial recognition software on top of the platform, so if your smile was big enough, you'd get a free ice cream. Kraft came in and overlaid mood recognition software where they would recommend a meal suggestion based on what they could see in your face, although you couldn't resist saying, well, couldn't they just use a body scan and say, may we suggest a salad? Other businesses that would have never touched vending with a 10-foot pole suddenly jumped into it. L'Oreal has a machine over near where Fashion Week happens in New York. The machine is a full-length mirror on the outside. As the woman stands in front of it on her way to work, it's scanning her, reading her skin tones, her kind of hairstyle, and her outfit, and suggesting out of the 400 SKUs in the machine, here are the 2 or 3 that you might really want to pick up here. So it's an absolute transformation. I think there's a lesson. If you want to enter a business you're not in, you'll probably fail. If you set out to transform that business, your odds of success become a lot greater. So fast forward, what's come of this two-sided model, which we stumbled and struggled and experimented our way to. We're now seeing that where those industry-wide success rates are maybe 1 in 10 projects delivering something, in a given year, we're seeing between 70 and 80% of the projects we touch deliver real stuff into the innovation pipelines and into the balance sheets of the businesses that are sponsoring these undertakings. Do we still misfire? Absolutely. Sometimes you do things that are just ahead of their time. But for all innovators out there, to just start with this simple thing of understand that it's a two-sided problem, it can make a world of difference.